Also,
All set.
all right, thank you, Michael. Good evening and welcome to the I-495 and I-90 Interchange Improvement Project Public Information Meeting. Tonight's meeting will highlight the reconstruction of I-90 and out of the 8 new interchange ramps within the interchange. As a reminder, the other 3 new ramps, were ES, SE, and WN, and they were covered at a previous public information meeting. We appreciate you taking the time with us tonight. My name is Gary Baxter. I work for MassDOT Design Build Group based out of Boston, and I am the project manager for this project. MassDOT District 3 in Worcester is overseeing the final design and construction. I will, excuse me, I'm joined tonight by a few other team members who you'll meet a little later on. This public information meeting is the fourth in a series of briefings and updates that we'll be holding over the next 4 years as we move through various stages of design and construction. We will do our best to go through the presentation slowly, as some of the slides contain a lot of important and detailed information. Before we get into the presentation, we would like to go over some of the instructions on how to participate in tonight's discussion. For that, I will hand it over to Joe Yu from MassDOT. Joe?
Thanks, Gary. My name is Joe Yu, and I am joined with
There's a lot of echo. There's a lot of echoing.
interesting.
Joe, if you mute the Teams meeting, you'll take care of that.
My name is Joe Yu, and I will be one of your producers, joined by Michael McNutt for tonight's webinar. Apologize for the audio troubles. Get into the presentation itself, we'd like to take a couple minutes to go over some Zoom functions for the meeting. There's 2 main ways that you can ask a question or share your comments after the presentation. First is using the Q&A box where you can type your questions and share your comments. You can also utilize the raised hand function where you'll be put in a queue and waited until you're unmuted by the producers. There is a drop-down menu to check your microphone, and feel free to do that as we are going through the presentation. If you are unable to access the internet or are having any technical problems, please call into the meeting at the number shown, followed by the webinar ID. Live transcripts and closed captioning is automatically generated by Zoom, so please note that the live transcript may not be 100% accurate. You can use the View button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen to adjust the meeting view settings to your preference. If you have any trouble with the meeting technology during the presentation, please call into the 888 number shown in the orange box on the right-hand corner of your screen. This slide will be going over some public meeting notes and procedures. Please note that this virtual public meeting will be recorded. MassDOT may choose to retain and distribute the video, images, audio, and transcript, so all parts of this meeting are considered public record. By continuing your attendance with this virtual public meeting, you are consenting to participate in a recorded event. So if you are not comfortable being recorded, please turn off your camera and keep your microphone muted. Otherwise, you can excuse yourself from the meeting entirely. Other important notes: your microphone and webcam are automatically disabled upon entering this meeting as an attendee. This meeting will be open to questions and answers at the end of the formal presentation, and there will be a survey once you leave this Zoom webinar. Please take some time to fill out the survey. Your feedback is very important to future works and public engagement efforts with the department. Moving on, we have the notice of MassDOT's policy on diversity and civil rights. All MassDOT activities, including this public meeting, are free of discrimination. We welcome the diversity from across the entire service area. If you have any questions or concerns, you can visit the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights using the website on your screen. All comments and All comments and questions are welcomed and appreciated. However, we do request that you refrain from any disrespectful comments to our panelists tonight. With that, back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Joe. We'd like to thank everyone for supporting us in getting the word out about this meeting, including the Metro West Daily News, Worcester Telegraph and Gazette, social media outlets, including Facebook and Twitter, municipal partners, including the Hopkinton Chamber of Commerce, Hopkinton Council on Aging, Town of Hopkinton Disability Commission, and the Disability Commission of Westboro. Community organizations also include the Central Massachusetts Planning Commission and the Westboro Senior Center. And then also we have the corridor, the corridor 9 and 495 Chamber of Commerce and the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Next slide. Thank you. We have broken our presentation into 3 sections. The first is a high-level overview of the project, followed by a review of the final designs plans for I-90 and ramps NW, NE, WS, SW, and EN. And finally, we will provide an overview of our outreach and communication plan for the project. Following the presentation, we will open the meeting up for questions and responses by our team. Also, it is important to note that there will be multiple ways for people to receive information about the project as it progresses through construction, which will be covered at the end of the presentation. All right, tonight's panel include myself, Gary Baxter from MassDOT. I'm the PM, project manager. We have JP Telemark, assistant construction engineer for District 3. Tom Emmerich, District 3 deputy highway director. Joe Frawley, District 3 operations engineer. Alex Murray from HNTB, our preliminary design team. And our producers, Michael McNutt and Joe Yu. From the design build team, we have Mark Shamp. He's the project manager for our Barletta Heavy Division. Howard Goldberg from Barletta. Don Cook, the design manager for our VHB. Josh Conradi from VHB, he's their highway lead. And Keith Sonia from RVA, presenting on outreach. Before we get into the details further in the presentation, I want to make some high-level points about the project. This is one of the largest projects MassDOT has advertised for construction since its inception in 2009. It's the only interstate to interstate interchange reconstruction ever taken on by MassDOT. On an average day, well over 200,000 vehicles pass by or through this interchange. And 50% of state's commercial truck traffic passes through the interchange on an average day. The interchange has been in what we consider an interim conditions since MassDOT implemented the all-electronic tolling on I-90 and removes the legacy toll booths back in 2016 and 17. We knew at that time that the larger project would be needed to complete and modernize the interchange, and which led us to today's project. The interchange is plagued by chronic congestion, which leads to extensive backups on 495 and 90. Long queuing and congestion lead to long travel times throughout the area and crashes. We have substandard geometry and traffic wheeze lead to crashes and rollovers. Remember that this interchange was originally designed for people to stop in order to pay their tolls. All these issues will be addressed by this project. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to Don Cook from VHB.
Thank you, Gary, and thanks everybody for attending tonight. Part of the problem we have with the virtual is we probably have many people we've seen at the last 3 or 4 meetings. We might find that out during Q&A, but appreciate people taking time out of their busy days to attend. Just as a little background, Gary had mentioned, this is a design build project, and there are really 2 primary procurement methods used by MassDOT. One is design bid build, and this is a design build. As a design build project, that involves a preliminary design being developed and permitted by others, as opposed to design bid build, where the design is finalized before going out for advertisement. As that preliminary design was developed and permitted, our team was selected to advance the preliminary design to final design and then to construct a new interchange. This project will therefore have concurrent design and construction happening over the 5-year total project duration, which runs through 2027. Most of the design is finished by the end of next year, with construction to follow. But as you can tell, we're still talking about design and design development, and some construction has commenced. So we are continuing to advance the preliminary design to final design. And as you're probably aware, construction has commenced. We have completed stage 0, which included some early enabling work, such as the fiber optic cable relocation from the I-90 median. We are currently in stage 1, that includes work in the 495 median, on the Fruit Street Bridge, and early work on ramps ES and WN. So I'll be starting off tonight with a general overview of the project, followed by tonight's focus areas of I-90 and 5 of the new interchange ramps, as Gary had noted. There are a total of 8 new interchange ramps, east, north, southwest, 2 for each direction. 3 new ramps, ES, SE, and WN, were covered at previous public information meetings. For those who have joined us for the previous meetings, we have already covered a lot. We had a general project overview meeting at the end of 2022. We presented Fruit Street along with ES and SE ramps and their design details in January of this year. We presented I-495 and ramp WN in April of this year. All of the previous meeting materials can be found on the project website. In general, the project limits extend about 3/4 of a mile in each direction along I-90 and I-495. This project includes, as Gary mentioned, a complete replacement of the interchange. It's important to note that the new interchange is to be constructed in an extremely sensitive environmental resource area, which continues to inform our ongoing design development as well as construction activities. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on I-90 right now, because Josh will go over the I-90 design details later in this presentation. But in overview, the future I-90 will provide 3 lanes per direction as it does today. There will be minor horizontal and vertical changes to accommodate the new interchange ramps and bring lane widths and shoulder widths up to current design standards. The I-90 bridge over the MBTA commuter rail, as well as over Whitehall Brook, will both be replaced. I mentioned the fiber optic cable relocation from the I-90 median, but there will also be additional fiber relocations along the I-90 eastbound shoulder as part of subsequent construction on I-90. With regards to the I-495 main line, future I-495 will also provide 3 lanes per direction as it does today. However, a major change is that the future 495 northbound will be constructed and placed in the existing median. I-495 southbound will essentially stay where it is. This approach also allows us to save traffic during construction. Once the new roadway is constructed in the median, we will temporarily move I-495 southbound traffic to the median, while the future 495 southbound corridor is being rebuilt in its existing footprint. Once that is complete, we will move 495 southbound to its final location and move 495 northbound traffic permanently into the median on the new roadway. I-495 bridges over I-90 and the MBTA commuter rail will be completely replaced. The 495 northbound bridge over Flanders Road will be rehabilitated. And there will also be a 4th lane developed northbound from this interchange up to the Route 9 interchange with 495. So I'd like to walk through the new ramp configurations, and just for context, when we say ES, EN, WN, what these represent, and I'm going to use ES as the example, it's the ramp that connects I-90 eastbound to 495 southbound, so ES. So ramp SE will connect 495 southbound to I-90 eastbound. So I know it's a little bit of an alphabet soup, and we'll try not to be too confusing tonight, but it does get involved with a lot of different designations. With regards to ramp ES, we did present the details for that design in January, and that ramp is under construction currently. The new ramp ES will be a direct ramp provided between I-90 eastbound and 495 southbound. It is the closest ramp to the neighborhoods in the southwest quadrant. Ramp SC design details were also presented in January. Ramp SC is a new loop ramp from 495 southbound to 90 eastbound. It will be part of a 2-lane off-ramp that will then split to provide connections to 90 eastbound and westbound. It will enter I-90 eastbound as a single-lane on-ramp. Ramp WN is a new direct ramp provided between I-90 westbound and 495 northbound in front of the Cumberland Farms facility. The ramp WN design details were presented in April, but it is a single-lane ramp, and its entrance to 495 northbound begins the additional 4th lane that extends up to the Route 9 495 interchange. So the details of the remaining 5 future ramps will be discussed in detail by Josh tonight. But just as a quick overview, Ramp WS is a new single-lane semi-direct ramp provided between 90 westbound and 495 southbound. It will combine with the new Ramp ES to provide a 2-lane on-ramp to 495 southbound. Ramp EN is a new semi-direct ramp provided between 90 eastbound and 495 northbound. It is also part of a 2-lane off-ramp from 90 eastbound that splits to 495 northbound and southbound. EN will enter 495 as a single-lane on-ramp on the new 495 bridge over I-90. NW is a new semi-direct single-lane ramp provided between 495 northbound and I-90 westbound. Ramp NW will combine with the new ramp SW to provide a 2-lane on-ramp to I-90 westbound. Ramp NE is a single-lane direct ramp from 495 northbound to 90 eastbound, and it enters I-90 eastbound as a single-lane on-ramp. And last but not least, Ramp SW is a new semi-direct ramp from 495 southbound to I-90 westbound. It is part of a 2-lane off-ramp that then will split and provide connections to 90 eastbound and westbound. And it combines with Ramp NW to provide a 2-lane on-ramp to I-90 westbound. In addition to the interchange reconstruction itself, there are two other key elements to the project. We have mentioned Fruit Street before, and we'll talk a little bit about it now. We discussed it at our January meeting. The Fruit Street Bridge will be replaced in 2 major stages, maintaining 1 lane of alternating traffic under signal control. The first major stage of Fruit Street is currently under construction. The work on Fruit Street also includes roadway, approaches, utilities, and landscaping features. Flanders Road, as mentioned, will be replaced. The northbound bridge, the 495 northbound bridge over Flanders Road. It will be a superstructure replacement only. It will be constructed with an overbuild so that we can maintain 3 lanes of travel during peak hours of the day. And there's also some utility work below on Flanders Road, as well as a minor widening to provide slightly wider shoulders and improve bicycle accommodation. So I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about items that are typically of most concern to abutters and the people who use the interchange. I had mentioned this interchange is being reconstructed in an extremely sensitive environmental resource area. Permits were issued during preliminary design, but they continue to inform all aspects of our final design development and construction activities. These existing resource areas include the Cedar Swamp area of critical environmental concern, the first in the state of Massachusetts, the Sudbury River, Whitehall Brook, as well as numerous surrounding wetlands and floodplains. We are in close coordination with Mass DOT Environmental, but also with DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. This coordination has been ongoing during design advancement and will continue during and post-construction to assure compliance with the permits and that the required mitigation is provided. And before I turn it over to Josh, one last aspect is traffic. So on the main lines, for those who have driven through the project site over the last few months, the existing 3 lanes on the main lines of both I-90 and 495 are being maintained, except for very short-term closures during off-peak hours, but primarily overnight is when we are doing our lane closures. All ramp connections between 495 and I-90 will be maintained. They may be maintained in a temporary alignment, but they will be maintained. We are not anticipating any significant or extended ramp closures. But in regards to not just the interstate, from a local perspective, keeping and maintaining access is important. As I mentioned, Fruit Street will be maintained with one lane with alternating two-way traffic. We had a few minor full closures at the beginning of stage one, and we will have perhaps a couple more minor closures, very limited in duration as we transition from stage 1 to 2. But for the vast majority of this reconstruction, the one lane of alternating traffic will be maintained. With regards to Flanders Road, there will be short-term lane closures below to support the bridge and utility work, but Flanders Road is not proposed to be closed at any time. So with that overview, I'd like to turn over to Josh from our team to discuss both the proposed I-90 mainline design details and the associated roadway, bridge, traffic, and landscaping details, as well as the remaining 5 ramps.
Thanks, Don. As Don mentioned, I'm going to start with discussing the final design of I-90 and then transition to the 5 remaining ramps that have not been discussed at previous meetings. This slide is just a repeat of what Don discussed a little bit earlier, but as a quick reminder, I-90 will basically maintain its current cross-section throughout the project. There will be 3 lanes in each direction with minor widening to provide acceleration lanes, deceleration lanes, and shoulders that all meet current design standards. The design build team will also be replacing the I-90 bridge over the MBTA railroad tracks and upgrading an existing culvert over Whitehall Brook to a bridge. Here's a typical section of what I-90 will look like at the end of the project. This section on the screen now runs from the western extent of the project, extending to the east until about where the existing loop ramps are located off of I-90 today. On the left side of the screen, which is the westbound side, there will be 2 acceleration lanes with a varying width buffer from the mainline traffic as those ramps begin to accelerate on and merge on to I-90 westbound. There, next to them, you can see the 3 westbound travel lanes and a paved median that will match the width of the existing median that is currently on I-90. I-90 will continue to be separated by a concrete median barrier throughout the extent of the project, and there will be locations where this barrier widens out to incorporate bridge piers or traffic signs, which will reduce the high-speed shoulder temporarily, and we'll see an example of that section later in the presentation. And then continuing to move across the screen, you see the 3 travel lanes for I-90 eastbound with 2 deceleration lanes for the eastbound off ramps that head towards 495 northbound and southbound respectively. Off the roadway on both sides of the pike, there will be a mixture of retaining walls and vegetated side slopes. As Don mentioned, the area surrounding I-90 is a sensitive environmental area, so the walls along this section are mainly to help avoid additional permanent impacts to these sensitive areas. So I'm going to start with the western limits of proposed I-90 and work my way to the east. The total project length on I-90 is just under 2 miles, so I'm not going to go over every foot of the project limits, but I will be hitting key locations along the way. The western limits of the project are about a half mile to the west of the existing loop ramps, and the I-90 eastbound and westbound, again, are along their existing alignments as they will be for the entirety of the project. On the top of the image, and I'm going to turn on my laser pointer to help you guys kind of see where I'm talking as I go through these. So on the top of the image, you can see the westbound acceleration lane merging onto I-90 westbound. And on the bottom right side of the image here, you can see the eastbound deceleration lanes beginning to form as they head towards 495. Also in this general area is where one of our proposed stormwater basins is going to be installed to help with stormwater management. Moving to the west, we get to Whitehall Brook, which is about a quarter mile from the western limits of the project. The proposed bridge is outlined in red and is going to replace the existing culvert that is out there today. On the top right side of the image is where you can see the 2 acceleration lanes from ramp SW and NW, and one of the acceleration lanes actually begins to merge into the second acceleration lane as they continue towards the western limits of the project. And on the bottom of the screen, you can see that both the deceleration lanes for ramp ES and ramp EN have fully developed. Continuing on, we get to where the old loop ramps and the existing loop ramp bridge over I-90 are located. This is approximately 1,500 feet to the west from the I-495 bridges that cross over I-90. On the right side of the screen is where ramp SW and NW will travel on a bridge over I-90, and they will continue along the top of the image until the acceleration lines that we saw on previous screens. And you can also see where ramp ES and EN have diverged from I-90 eastbound, and you can see where they begin to split into individual ramps to head towards I-495 southbound and I-495 northbound respectively. And we'll go over ramp EN in a little bit more detail later. And at the end of the job, this area at the top of the screen where you can see the existing loop ramps in the aerial image in the background will be where one of our mitigation areas will be installed to help mitigate permanent impacts to the environmental areas throughout the project. So as we move towards I-90, where it crosses under the 495 bridges, we develop a slightly new typical section. It continues with the 3 mainline lanes in each direction. However, the deceleration lanes on each side are now only 1 lane. And you can also see on this typical section where we have a bump out for the bridge piers that will be holding up the 495 bridges. And you can also see the bridge abutments on each side. I am not going to say this is exactly what these piers and abutments look like, but it's just to give you a general idea of what the feeling will be driving under the 495 north or bridges when the project is done. So now we get to that same plan view of where I-90 is heading under 495. This is also where the I-90 westbound off-ramp diverges from I-90 and starts heading towards 495 southbound. And you can see on the bottom of the screen where ramp SE begins to accelerate and merge onto I-90 eastbound. So continuing our journey to the west, or sorry, continuing our journey to the east, you can the section changes again. You can continue to see the acceleration and deceleration lanes on both sides of the highway, 3 travel lanes with the paved median and median barrier. The big difference on this section is that we're just showing an example of what those side slopes will look like with a mixture of landscaped side slope and modified rock fill. There will also be some plantings within these side slopes, so it's not going to just be straight grass out there. So this plan view on the screen now shows where I-90 crosses over the MBTA, CSX, Amtrak railroad tracks. The existing bridge will be replaced with a new single span bridge that will widen out for the proposed acceleration and deceleration lanes. The bridge will also be wide enough to accommodate the potential for a future track to be installed underneath the roadway. By this point, ramp SE that we saw in our last plan view has accelerated and merged onto I-90 eastbound. And ramp NE is now being shown on the bottom of the screen as it begins to accelerate onto I-90 eastbound. And at the top of the screen, you can see where ramp WN, you can see where ramp WN over here has left I-90 westbound and is beginning to head towards 495 northbound. And with that, we've reached the eastern limits of the project where I-90 crosses Flanders Road about 1.5 miles to the east of where we began. So full reconstruction of I-90 is proposed to end prior to the bridge over Flanders Road, and no improvements are proposed to the existing bridge that goes above Flanders. However, there will be resurfacing on the westbound side to help refresh pavement markings that will be impacted by some of our construction staging. You can also see the deceleration lane for ramp WN beginning just to the west of Flanders Road, and that heads off towards 495 northbound like we saw in the image before. Also in that same general area, there is a proposed compensatory storage for some of the floodplain impacts that we will be having as part of this project. Now I will jump into the remaining 5 ramps that have not been previously discussed. As Gary mentioned, those ramps are NW, NE, WS, SW, and EN. I'm going to pause briefly just to take a little sip of water. So as we mentioned a few times throughout the presentation, we've already discussed 3 of these ramps at previous meetings. Those ramps are ramp ES, ramp SE, and ramp WN. You can see those 3 ramps highlighted on the right side of your screen. These discussions also include where ramp ES and ramp WS come together as a 2-lane off ramp and head to merging towards 495 southbound, and where ramp SE and ramp SW leave 495 southbound and start heading towards the old toll plaza area. So I'm also not going to be rehashing those areas as part of this presentation. So before we jump into each individual ramp, I wanted to start in the old toll plaza area. So today, all 8 movements move through this old toll plaza area with multiple weaving maneuvers and lane changes, which are necessary for vehicles to travel in their desired direction. Our proposed design will continue to see 6 of the 8 ramps travel through this general area, but weaving movements have been eliminated and decision points have been minimized to help operations and safety. In fact, all the movements are either separated by grade or barrier through this old toll plaza, which we can better see on the next slide, where I'll show a section view of the old toll plaza area. You can see on the screen where this orange line is where the section is approximately taken. And it's just a glimpse of the old toll plaza area as ramps are continuously moving up and down as they go through the old toll plaza. So this hopefully helps visualize the grade and barrier separation that I was talking about. Ramp ES and WS are shown on the left side of the screen here. They are the highest of the 2 ramps in this general section as they head off towards 495 southbound. You can see the wall on the side of ES and then another retaining wall on the WS side that separates these 2 ramps from ramp EN. Ramp EN is starting to come up in elevation as it starts to head over towards 495 northbound, southbound. There's also a retaining wall on the inside of ramp EN that helps the grade separation between ramp EN and ramp NW. So this is where ramp NW is heading towards ramp SW as they combine into a 2-lane ramp to go over the pike. And then on the far inside lane is where ramp SE is located. And then that will begin to peel off and head towards I-90 eastbound. So some of these ramps, it's going to make more sense to walk through 2 at a time rather than 1 at a time. For example, ramp NW and SW merge together. So I will start with ramp NW and SW. So ramp SW comes from 495 southbound and heads towards I-90 westbound. Ramp NW comes from 495 northbound. And as we've mentioned a few times, they combine together in a 2-lane ramp just past the old toll plaza area and head towards I-90. So to try to make this as easy as possible, this orange barrier, this dashed line is kind of highlighting the ramp that we are talking about on each particular slide. And as I've been doing throughout the presentation, I'll try to use my laser pointer to try to highlight what I'm discussing at the time, because I know there's a lot of information on some of these slides. So here we can see where ramp NW diverges from 495 northbound just to the south of Fruit Street. Ramp NW is just to the east of where the existing 495 northbound pavement runs, which you can see very faintly in the background of this image here. And then ramp NW is actually going to be in a section of cut here. So there is a proposed retaining wall that runs along the outside of the ramp. And you can see in this section here to get an idea of what that retaining wall looks like. So there's a 14-foot ramp travel lane. There's going to be a concrete barrier. And then there's a proposed wall that will hold up the existing slope to help avoid impacts to neighboring properties. So ramp NW then continues along and crosses under Fruit Street, which we talked about previously. Once it gets underneath Fruit Street, it continues to raise up and goes on to a bridge, which is this red outline here. That bridge heads over 495 northbound and southbound. And the screen on the right, or the section that you can see on the right side here, is just an example image of what these bridges will look like. There's going to be a 14-foot travel lane. They'll be 26 feet in pavement width overall, and they'll have barriers on each side. Where these bridges cross over roadways beneath them, there will also be snow fence on top of the barriers. And then NW continues. This image is going to come back a lot. It's the very same old toll plaza image. So ramp NW, it's gone above 495 northbound, southbound, and now it's off of bridge structure and back down towards grade. It travels under ramp EN, continues to move through the old toll plaza to where it will be barrier separated from ramp SW. Both those ramps will continue under ramp WS, which is above them on a bridge structure. And then they will continue to head towards, you can see the Gore area developing. And that Gore area is where they combine to become a 2-lane ramp up on a bridge, heading over I-90 westbound and eastbound, and then starting to come back down in grade alongside I-90 westbound in the general vicinity of the old loop ramps as they begin to accelerate and merge onto I-90 westbound. So the 2-lane ramps you can continue seeing. You can see where the Gore develops, and then the acceleration lanes we discussed as I went over I-90. And this section is taken as I-90, or as the 2 ramps are starting to come back down towards the I-90 grade. There will be a vegetated slope in between them, some guardrail along I-90 to protect the I-90 traffic. And there will also be a retaining wall on the outside of ramp SW and NW that helps protect both the environmentally sensitive areas along the pike here, and also helps create additional room for this proposed mitigation area that I discussed a little bit earlier. So the next 2 ramps that I'm going to be discussing are ramp EN, from where it splits with ramp ES to where it merges onto 495 northbound. And then I will also be discussing, kind of at the same time, ramp NE, from where it leaves 495 northbound to where it begins accelerating to merge onto I-90 eastbound. So ramp EN and ramp ES, as we saw earlier in the presentation, leave I-90 eastbound together as a 2-lane off-ramp, with ramp EN traffic in the left lane and ramp ES traffic in the right lane. Ramp EN splits off to go towards the old toll plaza area, and ramp ES continues on the south side of the old toll plaza area as it heads towards 495 southbound. So as ramp EN heads into the old toll plaza, it will go under ramp WS. And then once it gets under that ramp, it will start climbing in grade and elevation until it eventually ends up on a bridge structure, which begins about here. And then it will go over ramp NW through the old infield area, and then continue on to cross over 495 northbound and southbound. Just to reorient you for a minute, we kind of changed the screen there, but this is where the last image left off and where we continue now. So ramp EN, like I said, continues over 495 southbound and 495 northbound, and then it travels right alongside ramp NE, and then we'll continue and accelerate onto 495 northbound on the same bridge that carries 495 northbound over the pike. So on this slide, I'll also start talking about ramp NE. So ramp NE diverges from 495 northbound and starts heading almost exactly where the old off ramp is along 495 northbound. And then it will continue on to I-90 eastbound. So where it gets right up against ramp EN here, you can kind of see what this section will look like. So ramp EN is still going to be quite a bit higher than ramp NE here. There will be a retaining wall on both sides of ramp EN, some concrete barrier to protect that retaining wall from the ramp NE traffic. And then this is where ramp NE will be as it's heading towards I-90 eastbound. So as ramp NE continues to head towards I-90, it actually ends up on a bridge structure of its own as it travels over a intermittent stream and it travels near some DCR parkland and actually eventually ends up traveling over a culvert that carries the Sudbury River underneath I-90. I'm just going to mention that there are no impacts to that culvert as part of this project. We're merely just putting the bridge on top of it. And then ramp NE will come back down the grade and start accelerating onto I-90 eastbound. And that acceleration will continue over the proposed bridge over the railroad that I discussed earlier. On the south side of the ramp here, again, there is a pretty decent sized wall that will hold up ramp NE, and that wall helps minimize environmental impacts to the land surrounding the Sudbury River on the southern side of I-90 here. So with that, if I haven't lost too many of you yet, we'll go into our fifth and final ramp of the night, ramp WS. So ramp WS moves from I-90 westbound until it combines with ramp ES into a 2-lane ramp that will continue on to 495 southbound. So we saw this same image pretty much a little bit earlier when I was discussing I-90 westbound, but ramp WS begins to diverge from I-90 westbound, basically at the 495 northbound and southbound bridges over I-90. Ramp WS will then begin to climb in elevation until it goes onto a bridge right about where my pointer is now. And that bridge continues to climb until it gains enough height to go over I-90 westbound and I-90 eastbound. In the section you can see on the top of the screen is just before we launch onto that bridge. You can see the 3 lanes of I-90 westbound. There will be, again, some guardrail in that location, a slope up to help minimize the exposed height of this retaining wall. And then ramp WS will have a retaining wall on both the inside and outside. The inside to keep the slope from running onto I-90, and then the outside, again, to help mitigate permanent impacts to environmentally sensitive areas. So continuing on, ramp WS is on a bridge over the pike. You can see here actually underneath is one of the areas where that median bump out is to accommodate a pier for ramp WS. That bridge will continue through the old infield area. You can see again faintly in the background where the old loop ramp is running today. So it'll be a little bit to the inside of that, or to the outside of that. Ramp WS will continue on structure over the 3 ramps that I mentioned before. So it goes over ramp SW, over ramp NW, and over ramp EN. And continues on over those 3 ramps. So again, I changed orientation on you. So this is this view we were just looking at through here. So then ramp WS continues on until it eventually combines with ramp ES, and those 2 ramps head off towards I-495 southbound. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Keith from our communication team to go over our outreach and communication plan.
Thanks, Josh. Good evening, folks. The public outreach team is assisting MassDOT by implementing a timely and informative outreach program. Ensuring that stakeholders are aware of the project and receive regular updates will help them plan their participation and choose ways to follow the project. We'd once again like to thank our municipal partners in Hopkinton, Westboro, Southboro, Northboro, Marlboro, Milford, and Upton for helping us publicize this meeting. Next slide. We've held a number of public meetings and continue to hold briefings, as you see there, with local and state officials, as well as neighborhood stakeholders as needed. We will hold additional meetings before the start of any major construction and at major project milestones. This schedule shows when our public meetings have occurred. I'm sure some of you have hopped on some of the previous meetings, but as we say, as new work starts, we'll continue to meet with you folks. Next slide. We're maintaining a robust email database, which includes key contacts from regional and local organizations, municipalities, and elected officials. In December, we announced the project with a postcard to 1,200 property owners and invited them to sign up for emails. Those contacts and anyone else who chooses to sign up for our emails will receive email updates on a regular basis before key project milestones in advance of construction activities and traffic impacts. Our stakeholder database will be continuously updated throughout the life of the project. So if you'd like to sign up, to scan that QR code. For the latest project information, we do encourage you to do so, and you can either scan that QR code or visit the project website. We'll also keep the project website updated with latest construction and traffic information. So again, be sure to visit regularly. You can also write us with questions or comments at our email address, 495-90improvements@state.ma.us. Finally, you can find MassDOT information on social media, both on Facebook and Twitter/X. I'd like to turn it back over to our MassDOT producers to discuss the format of the question and answer session.
Thanks, Keith. Before we get into questions and answer section, I'd like to take this time to ask if there's any public officials in this meeting who would like to say a few words. If you are one of those public officials and would like to say something, please type your name in the chat, in the Q&A box, and we'll give you a moment to speak. Currently, don't have anyone right now. So while we're waiting for public officials, I'd like to just go over the Zoom functions one more time. You can raise your hand to be put on queue and eventually unmuted for verbal questions. You can also submit your questions and comments using the Q&A button and typing them out. Please state your name before your question or comment. And since we do have a fair amount of participants tonight, please try to share only one question or comment at a time. And if you're speaking, limit it to 2 minutes to allow an equitable participation. To ask a question via phone, please dial *9, and the moderators will call out the last 4 digits of your phone number and unmute your audio when it's your turn. Lastly, there is a survey, as previously mentioned. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey after the meeting to let us know how your experience was. All questions and comments are subject to disclosure for public records, so please use these functions for project-related business only. So we do have a raised hand. We're going to go unmute Craig.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
So first of all, congratulations on an unbelievable engineering feat. I know you have a long way to go, but driving through it every day, I see tremendous progress, and I'm looking forward to the end result. So great job on the work, great job on the presentation. Appreciate it. My concern and my frustration for years has been the traffic Armageddon that has developed because of people streaking down what would be the northbound lane off of the Mass Pike. That lane is intended to go northbound on 495. However, the hordes of traffic cut in and cut off people that have been waiting in line to go south on 495. And it's like the Wild West. I'm surprised there hasn't been any sort of a road rage incident. I've called the state police barracks in Charlton probably a year ago. They want nothing to do with it. Can we get any kind of enforcement there, or any kind of cones or something to prevent people from cutting through cutting trucks off, cutting vehicles off. It is a nightmare. If you've driven down there on the hours to go home, it's quite dangerous. That's my question. And again, thank you for the presentation and thank you for the great engineering feat.
Thank you. I guess I will start off. I'm not going to be in a position much to talk about the enforcement from my position as the designer, but maybe someone else will jump in before I'm done here. But I mean, the good news, I think the only thing I can offer is the good news is that you know, the proposed improvements and the modification to the interchange will decouple, if you will, that entire area of the old toll plazas, and so that you will not have to be merging and weaving to make different movements to north, south, east, or west. You know, essentially everyone had to go through that old toll plaza when there was a toll plaza there. And then when the toll plaza was removed for the all electronic tolling project, everybody's still going through the same area, but in some respects, there was no need to slow down because of toll booths anymore. So, and I am one person who does have to drive through that interchange very often, so I do know what you speak of. So what I can offer is the good news is that what we're doing is going to hopefully rectify most, if not all, of that problem. I don't know if anybody else that's here on tonight on the panelists wants to speak to the enforcement issue at all, or is with regards to any kind of interim improvements. Oh, there's Joe.
Hi, good evening. Like Don said, it's kind of challenging for us to speak to enforcement issues, and certainly the issue that you noted was certainly one of the reasons why we moved forward with the project at this location in the first place, because we knew that what we could implement in the interim condition as part of our all electronic tolling project wouldn't fully solve the problem, and the issues in the toll plaza area are some of the issues that we knew of specifically. I think what I will suggest is that we can look at what might be possible for some short-term measures to try to more reinforced, to have people stay in their lanes as much as we can. We'll look at that and see what can be done. I know we have to balance putting in something to try to keep traffic in their lane with the need to be able to plow that area during the winter time and things like that while it's still in construction. But yeah, we'll look and see what we can try to do for short-term measures to try to address the issue while we're making it better as part of the construction project. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. And if I can jump into Craig, I apologize. I'm trying to answer a question. I know there's other questions coming in. I know you jumped in and said that's 4 years from now. And in some respects, you're right. If I can offer any hope on that front, the good news is the reason why we're advancing ramp WN, which is the westbound and northbound connection, and ES, which is probably specifically related to what you're talking about, the Pike East to the 495 South early, is that will draw at least that traffic out of that old toll plaza area. So that area will hopefully start to get a little less congested and a little less confusing, or a little less mayhem as we start to open those ramps. And some of those will be starting to open as early as later next year. So there may be some relief coming before 4 years, but at the end of the day, yes, the project does run through 2027 to get all of those movements out of that old toll plaza area. I don't know if that helps at all, but just wanted to clarify. It's not necessarily waiting all 4 years to get some of the ramps open. They will be coming online as they are built.
So Don, I'll just add to that too. It's the Millbury Barracks that actually covers the I-90 495 interchange. So the district can reach out to state police and ask them if they could step up some enforcement in that area during those times.
Thanks, Tom.
Well,
Thank you, everyone. There was a raised hand from Webb, but Karen Webb also has a question in the Q&A box. It goes like this. Since construction started, and most recently with the cutting of the trees which border 495 and the neighborhoods, sound has been extremely loud. It's not the construction itself, but it's the noise of the traffic on 495 and 90. What is being done to add sound barriers? This is becoming intolerable for the neighbors. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you, folks. And again, I'm going to ask a few others to join me. Obviously, we are advancing the project as it was given to us. And I know we've talked on some of these previous meetings about noise barriers and noise studies, and there was a fairly extensive noise evaluation done prior to our team coming onto the project. And so I think that perhaps, again, maybe somebody from MassDOT would like to just talk a little bit about maybe the work that was done prior to our team joining. But you know, that clearing along 495 South is to accommodate, it's within the right of way of the roadway. It is to accommodate the additional 2-lane on-ramp to 495 southbound. So that is part of the project, but I don't know if someone else, we had brought some noise people to the last meeting to anticipate some of these questions, and we didn't tonight. So I want to give somebody an opportunity to respond as far as next steps.
Thanks, Don. So I noticed there's a couple questions. There's also one from Mary Walsh regarding sound. So we did an extensive noise study on the area through our environmental section in Boston. And what I would ask is that whoever has an issue with this, to send us an email formally so that we can address it through our environmental section. So it's recorded here, but I think we'll get a formal response for you if you submit it through an email.
Thank you, Don, and thank you, Tom. Question, we have a raised hand from Robin. Robin, I'm gonna allow you to talk. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, I just responded. I live on 495 South, and so this past week I noticed the cut down trees behind my house was extensive, and I've lived here since 1990. The sound has just been unbelievable, just with the traffic and the downshifting of trucks. It is a problem. I'd love to have all of those repeat sound examinations done now, because it's significant without the trees. And this is I've lived here a long time. It's bad, and it is unbearable, as the other person said.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate your bringing up your concerns. And as Tom mentioned, if you can please send a formal correspondence to our email, I'll be putting that in the chat and directly to the questions as well. So please send an email to the project email, and we'll respond with our environmental unit. Thank you. Moving forward, we have a question from Tina. Tina's asking if the project is on schedule, kind of a general question for you, Don, and the project team.
Yeah, I'll again, I can speak to the design side, and yes, from a design perspective, we are advancing and on schedule. We have probably, I would say at this point, the 495 mainline design is fully complete. The I-90 design, the reason we're talking about tonight, it is very close to being complete. Should be complete by the end of this year or early next. The 3 ramps that were presented before this evening are in very good shape and are very close to being, if not completely designed. And the remaining 5 are moving to 100% design as we speak. So from a design perspective, yes, we're absolutely on schedule. And Mark Champ from Barlett is here, and he can talk a little bit about the construction schedule.
Yeah, similar to Don, substantial completion and final completion. Obviously, the dates are far out in the future, but we are still trending on schedule within 4 or 5 days, actually ahead of schedule. Obviously, that doesn't say much being 4 years out, but we are still on schedule.
Thanks, Don, and thanks, Mark. We have a question from Jim Stefano. The position of the NW off-ramp in the design is not quote just south of Fruit Street, but instead 1,100 feet to the south. This will redistribute the noise southward. The most disruptive noise is coming from Jake braking by heavy trucks based on the design speed for the NW ramp. Will braking remain a necessity, and can you predict where will it be most severe?
So I guess I can just jump in on, and I apologize, we're always dealing in thousands and thousands of feet on these projects, so it's probably always relative whether it's just south or south. You're absolutely right. The NW ramp does start to peel off 495 northbound, a reasonable distance south of Fruit Street. Again, I think we had the question about the Jake brakes at a previous public meeting. I'm going to let the district respond to their ability to restrict that or not a little bit. And then I think we're back to the noise question, which is probably, formally requesting, making a comment and being able to dust off the noise studies and the information previously that certainly somebody other than myself is going to be in a better position to answer. So thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Don. So I think when I read the question, it sounded like it was primarily trying to understand what kind of braking would need to happen by trucks with the realignment of NW. And I don't know off the top of my head what we're kind of using as design speed for that ramp movement, but certainly it's significantly higher than the existing ramp movement can accommodate. So given that trucks will not have to slow as much, traffic will not have to slow as much, and there won't be the same congestion because of the way the ramps are being redesigned and split, we would certainly expect that there should be less need for braking and for trucks to have to use their Jake brakes or their engine brakes. So I don't know that we can very specifically say where we think that they might need to brake, where that point would be along the ramp. And as Don mentioned, the engine brake is a required piece of equipment on trucks, and it's something that we can't post signs telling them not to use, that they can't use it. So certainly, but certainly if there are issues with heavy braking, we'll certainly try to be responsive to them and put signage that we can put in place to try to make sure that they test their service brakes, because they're not supposed to be making the noise that they do when they're being used adequately. Thank you.
So Joe, I can add a little bit to that. So again, the good news is that those loop ramps that were designed originally for everyone to come to a complete stop and pay a toll manually, were designed often in many instances, and these are as low as 25 miles an hour. So they had to get from highway speed down to 25 miles an hour at least to navigate the loop ramps themselves, and ultimately to a stop condition at the old toll booth. All of the new ramps are designed somewhere between 40 and 50 mile an hour design speed. So there will be a significantly less need, if you will, for the braking on these off ramps. And again, the other hope is also with the additional capacity of the ramps, single lane, current ramps that handle both movements, both north, south, east, west, will be separated into separate ramps, or they will be all 2-lane ramps, both off and on, that the congestion would be significantly less. That would also then require less braking as well. I did want to offer, I know Joe or Michael had put in the chat, we've put up on the screen, this is the email address that had been mentioned if you want to submit a formal question with regards to the previous noise work and the noise studies, and that can get the ball rolling on hopefully getting some better answers for everyone.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Don. Got a question from Edwa, asking the future ramps have barriers on the sides. Will those be strong enough to withhold large tractor trailers and keep them from falling on top of vehicles on other ramps?
Yeah, and I can bring up one of our structural guys if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts. But I will say this: all of these that will not be a problem. All of these barriers are currently standard barriers, designed and to meet federal standards. They are crash tested extensively, where they run every size vehicle into them at various angles, to assure that they can not only be the issue you're concerned about is prevented, but also to more safely redirect them back into the roadway, as opposed to, abruptly entering back into the roadway stream. If we want to bring up Andrew Burkholder, he can let him talk a little bit more about the structural components of those barriers and those designs that also allow us to prevent that situation from happening. So I don't know if you just want to unmute Andrew or bring him up as a panelist, or what the best way to do that is.
Yes, I can definitely do that.
Thank
I
you.
believe Andrew is a
Panelist.
attendee. We can promote him to a panelist.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
He is now a panelist.
Awesome. Andrew. There he is. Oh, you got on mute. Down at the bottom.
You're muted.
Down at the bottom left, you're supposedly unmuted.
You may have to adjust your microphone settings because it looks like you are unmuted.
Okay,
There you
There
are.
you go.
Now you're good.
sorry about that, everyone.
Yep.
So just to add on to what Don said, I think he covered the barrier question very well. What's not seen in the graphics is what's called a moment slab, and this is a large piece of concrete that is connected to the barrier and is under the roadway. You won't see it driving by. Again, it's not in the graphics, but it works as a complete system to address your concern with vehicles impacting those barriers when they're on top of walls. So that barrier and moment slab, they work together as a structural system to resist those loads from large trucks.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. Goes an email regarding work happening tomorrow evening from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Can you tell us what work is being done and what noise level we should expect? We live on Fruit, very close to the bridge.
There's Mark. I was gonna say that's probably a good Mark question.
Yeah, I believe there is going to be some work adjacent to Fruit Street on the ramp itself. We're installing a conduit line crossing the ramp. So I think the email was pertaining to that because there might be some lane closures on the ramp to facilitate that, but it shouldn't be too loud next to you. It should be located a little bit further away than right on top of Fruit Street.
Thanks, Mark. That's it for our first round of questions from our participants. So we'll get into some repeat questions. Jim asking about the ramp design and the speeds earlier, provided a follow-up. In the plans put out by Mass DOT earlier, the ramp design speed is 35 miles per hour and the grade has not been changed. So the need acceleration remains the same. I guess this is more of a comment than a question, but
I can offer something to that, Joe, though, and I don't know exactly from my perspective what earlier plans. Jim, if you can clarify that, I don't know exactly what you're talking about. What I can tell you is we're designing ramp WN for a 45-mile-an-hour design speed. That is what is in our design that we're developing now. And in fact, the grade does change, and it changes for the better, because currently, as you come off the loop ramp, you do have to come up over, but you're then fairly level. It's just not a significant change, but it's certainly not getting any worse. But I just wanted to be clarified. I'm not sure the 35-mile-an-hour reference, but we are designing ramp NW for 45-mile-an-hour design speed.
Great. Thank you very much. We have a comment from Mary Walsh saying that this was an email that she sent to Michael prior to joining the meeting. So is a pretty long comment. I'm just gonna try to read through it as fast as possible. But as we mentioned earlier, please provide an email to the project email, which is 495-90 improvements at state.ma.us, and we'll work with our environmental services section to get a formal response to your concerns or questions. But Mary says, as an appreciation regarding one lane fruit bridge, working well on enabling the communities to head east and support emergency vehicle access to the neighborhoods. Last week, an extensive removal of trees, shrubs, and forestry in general occurred along the backyards of many homes on Huckleberry Road back up to the construction area along 495. This significantly impacted the buffer to the highway area, both from a view site perspective and a noise sound perspective. What remedy options are planned, and what is the timeline for implementation?
I think we've touched on this, Joe, already with Mary. So I would suggest using the email to formally ask the question, and then we can get the right people and the right information to be able to answer that. I did want to, if Jim's still there, I wanted to kind of, somebody had a great thought about the question about ramp NW and its alignment and its grade and how it's going to be. Josh, I don't, do we have what's the best that could show sort of the where you need to decelerate with the loop ramps today versus where you might need to decelerate with ramp NW in the future? Because I think the other good news there is that I'm looking for something that maybe's got a little bit more of a, maybe it's small scale, but that doesn't show my existing loop. How about the plan at the end of the beyond the PowerPoint where we just show all the loop ramps? I know it's fairly small scale, but maybe we can make the point from that, and we'll see. So maybe you can use your laser pointer to help me a little bit. So you can see where the existing loop ramps are today as you come up northbound. I mean, they're extremely tight radii, and they are including extending to the east, closer to both the Hopkins Country Club and some of the neighborhoods through that area. In terms of that whole area, I'm assuming trucks are braking through that entire existing loop ramp. And then they come through and up and over, and then they're through the existing toll plaza. Coming up off of the NW ramp, it's essentially a tangent section off of the main line, and it will be heading upgrade immediately, which will help slow vehicles down without having to brake. They do ultimately get up over 495. It will be a higher clearance level than it is currently, but you really won't see that kind of, that's the curve radius that they'll have to brake to navigate the 45-mile design speed that I was talking about, significantly less severe than the loop ramp. So I can't sit here and say that there'll be no truck braking at all, but I do feel like the amount and the intensity will be reduced with this ramp design as opposed to those current loop ramps. But I just wanted to kind of point that out from a geometric perspective, if that helps at all. So he's got a follow-up. Sorry, Joe, I can just run right into it. I got the things up. And Josh, you may have a better feel for this than I, if you want to come up for a minute. So he's also talking about the existing grade of 495 and the proposed grade of 495 and how those grades are different and whether that's going to be an impact for us.
Yeah, so existing 495 is actually getting, or proposed 495 through this area. Hold on, let me pull back up my laser pointer.
So I'll say horizontally while you're getting ready. Horizontally, it moves further away from the neighborhoods because it's being moved into the median, which helps. It's not perfect, but it does help. But if you want to talk about the vertical profile a little bit, that would be.
So 495 is more or less at the same elevation through this area, and then as it gets kind of into the Fruit Street area, it's actually starts going down lower than the existing 495 northbound. So the main line is actually a little bit lower through this area than it is today. NW, it continues kind of going down because all of 495 northbound is grade going down. So NW continues going down here profile wise as it approaches Fruit Street, but it does come up slightly from where existing 495 northbound is. When it gets underneath Fruit Street, it is not crazy higher than existing 495 northbound actually. It's probably about, sorry, I'm just trying to look at the plan. It's probably about 8 feet higher than existing 495 northbound when it gets underneath Fruit Street. But there will also be a large retaining wall on the right side of it. So like Don said, we can't control the truck braking, but it should be hopefully less frequent than it is using the existing loop ramps.
Great, thank you guys. We had a raised hand from Jim. So Jim, if you wanna continue this conversation. Yep, there we go. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, so I enjoy your presentation. The question was, I looked at the plans originally, that was when there was initially made public. Along the time where there are 3 alternative plans, and they discussed the final version is the D3. I don't, it's been over a year now. So, but looking at the plans, it looked like the grade going down there didn't really, and the northwest off ramp didn't really increase. So, and it was designed, it was shown as 35 miles an hour. So because the point at which the trucks exit the 495 going north is now moved, it used, well, right now, I'm not sure what it is exactly now. It was right at the turnaround underneath Fruit Street. It's now been moved back, or it will be moved back about 1,100 feet. Which is actually, you can see the golf course. There's all the big green area over there, but it moves it down to a point which is right at the 495 emblem. So my question is, what's going to happen to the trucks as they try to anticipate that the need to decelerate on that junction? That was my concern. So the question is, is the impact for noise going to be distributed southward? And all those people are going to experience that. Oops, I can't hear you.
Sorry. I think what I can offer is that, where it does come off of 495, the ramp itself is essentially a transit section. So that 45 mile, which is the reduced design speed, compared to the main line, really doesn't start to geometrically come into play until you get up under Fruit Street and you start coming into that first curve. So there may not be a need to decelerate significantly coming off of the main line, but I mean, of course there will be. But I think maybe the best thing would be, again, drop something in that email as we're compiling all of the noise evaluations and things that were done previous to our team jumping on board. We can look and see what that actual analysis looked like. And then we'd also be happy to kind of provide you updated profiles and plans, because if you're looking at some of the previous alternatives that were developed back before last year, you might be looking at stuff that was either discarded or has certainly been refined and changed as part of our design development over the last year. So we want to make sure you're looking at the latest and greatest stuff. So drop something in that email and you'll be on the list of people that we get the noise analysis back to as well. And we can also provide you some updated plan and profile specifically for ramp WN if that's what you look, or sorry, NW if that's what you're looking for, to kind of help you understand that a little bit better.
Great. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Don. We have a question from Edwa saying ramp NW appears to have a crossover with SE/SW, access NW and SW as well. Is there really another crossover such as is causing a danger in the present environment?
I'm just gonna, the simple answer, and Josh has brought up, is no. Some of this might just be, it looks like you're crossing, but you're actually crossing at different levels. So we'll have no more of there'll certainly be merging taking place where a 1-lane ramp and a 1-lane ramp come together into a 2-lane ramp. So it's not forcing a merging of any traffic, and there's no weaving at all. We've eliminated all of the weaving with this ramp configuration. So it may look like it on some of these graphics because things look like they're happening at the same level, but they're all actually separated by bridge structure. So they're all over and under each other. So you won't have that weaving. So that'll be a much better situation.
Thanks, Don. We have a question from Deneen, who just joined in, asking when is the Fruit Street Bridge over the railroad going to be completed?
I think I think Tom and Joe or Joe are ready to answer that. They have some information as an update, so.
Yeah, I was just trying to find the unmute and
Mostly.
video buttons. So currently, weather's been playing a role in the completion of the construction of the bridge. We anticipate late fall. They should be pouring the bridge deck sometime in the next week. And we hope to have it open probably before Thanksgiving. That's what it's looking like right now.
Thanks, Tom, for the updates. And that's it for now for questions. No one else has any raised hands either. So I'll pass it on to Gary to make a decision on how long we're gonna stay open for the Q&A session and when we're looking to close out the meeting tonight.
I think we'll just give it a couple more minutes, see if anything else comes in.
But while we're waiting, I'll thank everybody again. I know, appreciate people taking the time out and being interested, and we're happy to try to answer and resolve as much as we can for everybody.
You're stealing my thunder.
I'm sorry, Gary, I didn't want to do it, but I was looking at the thing and I see people dropping off like flies and I didn't want to wait.
Yeah, okay. So I'll go ahead and end it and just say the same thing. Thank you for your participation, your time tonight. I want to thank our whole team here for putting on a great presentation, and feel free to stay connected with us. If you have additional questions, submit them, or just to stay connected with the project through our project website. And with that, I'll wish everyone a good night. Thank you.